Thank you, Sita, and thank you, Men, for the invitation to share a little bit about my thoughts in terms of sustainability, sharing with you a bit about what is impact, right? What is impact, and how do we know that we are actually creating impact, and why does impact matters? So I think like the two speakers that we have just now, Vicky and Juliana, has already been giving us shining example about making design decisions that actually support the evolution for a more sustainable world. And perhaps I could start by introducing my background, our company's background a little bit. I'm from Pi Strategy, and we are an internationally certified impact business, a certified B Corporation, that we specialize in helping businesses to apply a sustainability lens and ESG lens to their product strategy, to their corporate strategy, or to their business operation. So truly bring out what it means to be driving profit and driving impact together. So here is a glimpse of some of our core team members. So we are mainly based in Hong Kong, but we also have colleagues that are based in Germany as well as in Japan. Today's discussion may be more closely linked with my colleague Hannes, who is the environmental life cycle specialist with a PhD in LCA and over a decade of practicing experience working with corporations in understanding the environmental impact of their products. And I also have here today Yan, my colleague sitting over there, who is our senior advisor on sustainable fashion with many years of experience in the textile and garment industry and involved a lot in terms of sustainable innovation. And maybe another 2 points is about, like, I'm not sure if all of you have heard about certified B Corp, a B Corporation. If not, I encourage you to Google and to have a look because it truly exemplifies what we believe at Pi, that is that marrying impact and marrying profit together is not a fantasy, but is something that we can actually deliver. And at Pi, we are, Dr. Low mentioned about like SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. We are accredited trainer for SDG impact standards by the United Nations SDG impact. So now let's get into the topic. So the why, right? So we heard about the two speakers, Vicky and Juliana, share about their amazing work in terms of innovating for sustainable change. So I think there are the sustainability imperatives that every city, like every company are actually facing, whether we are consciously aware of it or not consciously aware of it. Like here on the screen, like given the limitation of time, I wouldn't go into all the details, but I just want to flesh out this topic for perhaps for us to have a reflection on. For example, like with population growth and urbanization, right now in the world, we are talking about 7 billion on the planet, and we are expecting the population to grow to 9 billion by 2050. Which is only about 20 years from now. So then what does it mean, right? When you have a planet that are adding 1/3 of the population, how are we going to feed them? How are we going to dress them, given all of you from textile and garment industry? So how much materials do we need to extract from the planet in order to clothe them, in order to feed them, in order to house them? And how are we going to deal with all the waste that people create? And don't forget that these populations are coupling with urbanization growth. So in urban city, the way that we consume compared to rural living is totally different ballgame. So how are we going to make the world sustainable? And why the urgency to deal with like sustainable change? And right now at Sound Music, we are having COP27. like with nations, I must say, like pretty pathetically, discussing about the climate agenda and taking action, turning intention, commitment, slogan into action, because the world is warming. It's a scientific fact that have been tested, that have been polished throughout the past 50 years. The climate warning actually was sounded by a scientist back in the 1800s. Back in 1800, scientists already alert the world that there is a risk of global warming that we need to pay attention. But as human beings, our inertia sitting to do nothing. So after almost 100 years, then we started to see more and more research coming out, like crying out the imminent urgency about climate change and how is it going to impact the world. So we don't have the details to go into the discussion about climate change, but I do want to flag this out and hope that it is a topic that you will also care. And with that, like with all the sustainability challenges that we are facing, the United Nations back in 2015, like set the global agenda that covering 17 UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and then with 167 targets that are underlaying these 17 goals. So they agree by governments around the world that this will be the agenda that we are pushing for the next 15 years by 2030. So these 17 goals are actually the framework where the world has identified as critical for the world to continue to develop sustainably, so that what we need to meet our needs today will not compromise our future generation to meet their own needs. Perhaps I can fast forward to here. So annually, the United Nations publish like a progress report in terms of how the world is doing in meeting SDGs. And my colleague have extracted, like among the 17 goals, a few of them that we think are relevant to the textile and garment industry and for fashion designer. So, and your decision, every one of you from the industry and aspiring like industry player with the students, please be clear that all the decisions that you are going to make and you have made impact these goals. All right. So when we talk about poverty, like whether like the industry's practices, the industry's operation, the industry as an employer, are you actually contributing to eradicating extreme poverty, or are you contributing to creating poverty? Like with your manufacturing practices, are you helping to protect and protect safe drinking water, fresh water for people in the community, or are you actually polluting them? So, and then, like, not to mention in terms of sustainable consumption and production practices, which we can touch on a bit more. And then with the way that we operate, with the way that we produce, are we helping to mitigate climate change? Are we helping to reduce the global greenhouse gas emission? So in the choices of materials, or in the way that you produce and use the materials, are you helping to contribute towards conserving and restoring like terrestrial biodiversity, or are you actually driving some species to extinction? So these are all the decisions that I believe all players in the textile and garment industry, all fashion designers are making actually every day, with or without consciously aware of these decisions that you make and the impact that you are actually creating here, right close to you, or further down the supply chain or the value chain. And so just zooming in to look at the responsible consumption and production, which is UN SDG 12, So you could see from this chart that basically we are looking at the global clothing sales have already doubled, like grow 2 times over the past 15 years and so. And it's actually growing faster than world GDP. But at the same time, the use of clothing, how we use our clothing, are actually declining. That means for each piece of garment, we are actually wearing it less time before we dispose it. So then the question is that sustainable? And all the trend about fast fashion, is that sustainable? Is that a sustainable way to consume the resources from the planet and also disposing them? And how we can make it circular in order to not to deplete the planet to the way that it cannot regenerate. And like when we talk about recycling material, upcycling material, like as a sustainability professional, like having been in the field of sustainability for about 20 years, even starting with the day that sustainability is not yet a term that the world know of, I'm all for recycling, upcycling, but then like these are the figures that are currently the world are performing in terms of upcycling and recycling, right? So I may be very blunt here, but don't, like I say, I plead for all of you that don't just think about when we use recycling materials, then we can push out as many quantity as possible, so that people wear it the shortest amount of time that they can buy new one. Because when they dispose those materials, oftentimes very few percentage right now, and not enough regulation or discipline all of us to actually recycle those recyclable materials. So at the same time, it's not just all gloomy pictures. We do see around the world, like internationally or locally in Hong Kong as well, we see the regulators are beefing up their games. So whether in terms of Hong Kong Stock Exchange requiring like publicly listed company to disclose their sustainability performance, international standards like GRI, TCFD, CDP, and all these. So you may question that these are just disclosure. They are just talking, right? Hopefully, it is the intention that through disclosure, it will create the public pressure. Civil societies, as they watch these corporations, then it will kind of nudge the corporations to actually drive their impact. And not only the regulators are more kind of forthcoming in terms of asking corporations to be more sustainable, environmentally as well as socially in their practice. At the same time, the civil societies are also asking for it. So then we see more and more brands across all industry sectors, including textile products, are communicating with the consumers in terms of their products being conscious, their products being eco-friendly, being sustainable. However, so I guess some of you would have known that, like about 2 months ago, like H&M as well as Decathlon, they have been fined by the Netherlands authority for 500,000 euro and 400,000 euro respectively for impact washing. Because I'm like, whether they are actually impact washing or not, I'm not sure, right? Because I haven't worked with their company, looked at their data to understand whether what they are trying to claim are true or not. But the fact is, when the Dutch authority, the authority of consumers and markets, who protect the consumers' right, like ensuring that the consumer are actually buying what they want to buy. So when questioned by the Authority of Consumers and Markets from the Netherlands, these two brands, they are unable to provide evidence that why their piece of clothing or their bags are more eco-friendly and more conscious than the other stuff that they are selling. Right. So I think there are lots of rooms for every one of us to do better in terms of understanding impact, in terms of seeing impact more than just a goodwill, seeing impact more than just a slogan, but seeing impact as something that is important, that is critical, that is imminent for all of us to understand, to manage, and to drive better. So the question then is, how might we actually understand, manage, and communicate our impact in a way that is more than just, I feel that there is impact in what I do, more than a sense of feeling? So I think behind impact or underneath impact, there are the arts and the science that to help us understand like whether one is truly creating positive impact in the world or avoiding one's negative impact in the world. So the arts of empathy, and here are the science that we are advocating. So life cycle assessment is an important scientific methodology that have already been used over, I think, 50 years or so since the science was being developed in terms of measuring the environmental impact of a product's life cycle. That means from raw materials extraction to make the product, to the production process, to the distribution of it, to the use and the care of the product when it's being used by corporate or individual consumers, as well as to the end of life disposal, whether they end up in landfill for incineration or for recycling. So it looked at the whole life cycle of a product, of its materials, to understand to quantify the environmental impact that it's creating. It not only helps company or help individuals to understand the impact, but most importantly, the purpose of life cycle analysis is to guide sustainable design in early stages of material development, product development, as well as technology development. So in the life cycle assessment, like we will look at, for example, the impact of a material of a production or a product on marine biodiversity, on terrestrial biodiversity impact, the energy use, fresh water, its impact on carbon emissions, its impact on waste treatment. So I hope I'm not overwhelming you, but for example, our colleagues Hannes and Marco, so what they would do is to look at for each process, for each stage of the life cycle of a product, what they would look at is to start with looking at 18 impact categories, 18 environmental impact categories. From global warming, water consumption, fresh water, ecotoxicity, to all the different aspects. So from it, then the data will be aggregated to look at whether those products, how it's performing in terms of its impact to human health, its impact to ecosystem, its impact to resource availability. And so those analyses would then be able to help a company, to help a design studio to actually make informed decisions in terms of how it can make choices of materials, production method, distribution method, how it should manage its packaging, how it should design the care and the end of life of a product. So my advocacy here for everyone in the audience is that can we all take a step forward when you design a beautiful product to clothe your customers, can we also make it in a beautiful way for the world as well? So here is just a case study that we help a Hong Kong retailer to conduct a life cycle assessment for one of their new technology solutions. So it is something that they have invited me to also openly share at through webinar. So I think it's fine for me to share here. So it's a new technology that can help that can use a hydrothermal process to separate PET and cellulose, so from blended materials. And it can use the recycle so that the recycled PET can be used to produce, they can be recycled in a high quality way where the PET can be used to produce other clothing. So I think intuitively, when you can recycle a materials, one would think that, it's of course more environmentally friendly, right? However, through the environmental life cycle analysis, it's not worse than the status quo that the industry is using in terms of producing a new piece of shirt, but it's no better. However, with the environmental life cycle analysis, we were able to see, actually, where are some of the areas that it can tweak. For example, in the way that the machine is being operated. With that slight treatment, then actually the technology can help reduce the whole impact on climate by 15% in the production process. So it is making a knowledgeable and informed decision to guide better sustainable design and sustainable operation. And I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this amazing brand, Asket. So they are a Swedish fashion brand. They are shining examples of really following science, taking a deep dive to understand their own impact and to redesign their whole product portfolio, their sales strategy in order to be truly a sustainable fashion brand. So here in the middle is what they call an impact receipt. When you buy a piece of garment from their shop, you not only get the normal receipt where you will see like how much it costs and things like that, but they actually give you an LCA impact receipt that tells you for that particular piece of garment how much emissions, how much fresh water, and how much energy impact it is in terms of its raw materials, milling process, other manufacturing process, and also in terms of transportation. So this is really trying to inform consumers and allow consumers to make a conscious decision on choosing their brand. So I think that concludes my sharing for today. And again, my advocacy for everyone in the industry that make decisions that help to make not only your customers beautiful, but also help to make the world beautiful. Thank you.